Now let's return and look deeper at this e-voting system which took place in Kaduna State. And we have the National Coordinator of Election Monitor, Mr. Abiodun Ajilola, on the News at 10. You're welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Now, you're one of those that has been advocating for the adoption of the electronic voting system in Nigeria. How would you describe what happened in Kaduna local government elections today?
Yes, in my opinion, I think it's a welcome development, a very good one at that, because many people have ascribed a lot of, fantasies to electronic voting as if it's something very mysterious that is unachievable. But what has happened in Kaduna today has made us to see that it is achievable, and it's something that we truly need in our electoral process. If you look at some of the biggest challenges today, in our elections, especially in the area of electoral fraud, you find out that electronic voting would answer some of these issues quite accurately. For example, overvoting is one of the biggest problems we have today. If you were part of the Anambra governorship election of 2017, you discover that 113,000 cancellations were made, and most of these cancellations were related to overvoting and non-use of the smart card reader. Also, we have serious challenges with people believe in collation. And there's a need to, with an electronic voting system, a full system. I think in Kaduna today, collation was not done electronically, but in a full electronic voting system, collation would also be done electronically. And what this would do is to ensure that some of the irregularities we've been seeing in collation would be removed. I mean, also it allows us to have results to come out on time. In 2015, presidential results came out on Wednesday early in the morning. Election was on Saturday, and within those 5 days, there was a lot of tension in the country. And this is something which is dangerous for security. Also, you have to look at research and voter patterns, which you can get from the machines, which give you knowledge about what's happening in the voting patterns of the people. Also, we have 68 registered political parties, and you can imagine a ballot of 68 parties if you have 68 candidates, and we might even have more than that by 2019. And imagine if all these are to be on one ballot paper, it's going to be very cumbersome. But with an electronic voting system, as has been done in Kaduna today, the issue of a long ballot paper would not be there, which is currently an issue with the high number of political parties that we have in Nigeria today. So all in all, I think an electronic voting system is very important. It will give us a lot of advantages. And I think the National Assembly should, as quickly as possible, pass the current Electoral Amendment Act so that we can have the opportunities to explore every facet of the electoral process, including electronic voting, if the Electoral Commission feels it's possible.
Well, Mr. Ajilola, some people may be skeptical about it because it's technology and it can be manipulated.
Well, it depends on what type of manipulation. Already the electoral process is manipulated in some ways, as we have seen, as I've mentioned earlier, in the areas of, overvoting and all that. But let's look at the smart card reader and take that as a case study. How many times has the smart card reader been manipulated? In very few cases, if at all. I'm not even aware of that. What has happened is that in certain cases, people don't want to use the smart card reader. So what they do is to say that the smart card reader is not working, or the community says we will not use smart card reader. And for that reason, they abandon it and revert to manual accreditation where they can manipulate the process. But actually manipulating the card reader, I have not heard of that at the moment. And why this is important is because there's a general myth that technology can be easily manipulated. But from the experience we have seen, even in Kenya, where there was the so-called problem with the elections last year, it wasn't because the electronic voting system failed, not at all. It was because the Kenyan law required that both the electronic collation that is done must be matched by a physical collation from what we have, like a receipt, like when you print from the POS, the receipt comes out. It's called a voter verified paper audit trail. And this is used to, check how people voted. So the law in Kenya says that before you declare the result, the electronic tally must also be cross-checked with the physical tally. And about 10,000 polling units, which represents about 25% of Kenyan polling units, total polling units in Kenya, had not received the hard copies. And for that reason, the results were deemed by the judiciary not to be found to be credible. I mean, for that was the reason, not that there was a failure in technology. So just as we have seen in Kaduna today, the technology is robust. There are issues, like we had of 1 or 2 cases of machines stolen, but all those are minor as compared to what we are having already in the existing process we have in the country. So I think technology will bring a lot of benefits. And when we look at 2019 and future elections, I think it's important to see that when people want to manipulate the process, we've seen with the card reader that what they decide to do is to circumvent it. But in the case of electronic voting machine, if you decide that you're not going to use the EVM by collaboration with the polling official or coercing the polling official, then it means that election does not hold in that place, and the community must decide if we don't want our votes to count. So I think that's a significant advantage of it.
So what hitches